Amazon just made $180 billion in a single quarter. At the same time, it's quietly pulling jobs out of New York, not because it's struggling, not because it's running out of money, but because it may no longer need the city at all. That's the part nobody wants to say out loud. This isn't just another round of layoffs. It's a signal that something deeper is breaking beneath the surface. A system that once made New York untouchable is starting to crack. And if a company like Amazon is stepping back, who moves next? New York doesn't run the way most people think it does. It doesn't depend on the masses. It depends on concentration. A very small group carries a massive share of the system. The top 1% of earners generate about 40% of the city's income tax revenue. That's not a statistic. That's a structural dependency. It means the entire financial stability of the city is tied to a narrow layer of high-income workers, the ones filling corporate offices, driving deal flow, and anchoring entire industries. Now think about what happens when even a fraction of them disappear. Fewer people commuting into Manhattan, fewer high-value transactions, less spending in the ecosystem built around them. Restaurants feel it first. Transit systems feel it next. Commercial real estate starts to crack after that. And then the real pressure begins, inside the city's budget. Because when that top layer shrinks, the tax engine slows down. And New York doesn't have a backup system ready to replace it. This is where Amazon becomes more than just a company. Inside New York's economy, Amazon functions like infrastructure, a generator of high-paying jobs, a stabilizer of tax revenue, a signal to other companies that this is still the place to be. So when Amazon cuts roles or shifts operations out of the city, it's not just a corporate decision, it's a stress test on the entire system. And if that engine starts to weaken, the question isn't just what Amazon will do next, it's who will be left to pay for everything that depends on it. In just 4 months, around 800 jobs disappeared from Manhattan. That number sounds small until you look closer. These weren't warehouse roles, not delivery drivers, not entry-level positions. These were high-paying corporate jobs, the exact layer New York depends on the most, the people who pay the highest taxes, the people who spend the most money, the people who keep the entire system running. And then it gets worse, because Amazon didn't stop in New York. Across the company, roughly 30,000 corporate roles have been cut since late 2025, the largest workforce reduction in its history. This isn't a one-time adjustment, it's a pattern, a deliberate reshaping of how the company operates, who it keeps, and more importantly, where it keeps them. So now the question shifts, not why is Amazon cutting jobs? That part is already clear. The real question is, why are these cuts hitting New York? Because companies like Amazon don't make random decisions. Every location, every headcount, every dollar optimized. So if jobs are being removed from Manhattan first, it means something about this city no longer fits the model. And once that realization spreads beyond Amazon, what happens when other companies start asking the same question? Manhattan doesn't collapse all at once. It empties out slowly, quietly. Office buildings start losing tenants. Rents begin to soften. Entire floors sit dark in the middle of the workday. Transit systems feel it next. Fewer riders, lower revenue, a network built for millions, now running below capacity. Then come the small signals, lunch spots with shorter lines, coffee shops closing earlier, restaurants cutting staff just to survive. Individually, none of this looks like a crisis. Each piece feels manageable, temporary, easy to explain away. But when you connect them, a different picture starts to emerge. This isn't random. It's a chain reaction. High-income workers disappear, spending drops, foot traffic declines, commercial real estate weakens, city revenue starts to tighten. A feedback loop begins. And right in the middle of this shift, Amazon is doing something that doesn't fit the narrative. It's not pulling back, it's accelerating. The company is planning to spend $125 billion on capital expenditures, one of the largest investment cycles in modern corporate history. So this isn't a retreat, it's a reallocation. Money isn't disappearing. Jobs aren't vanishing into thin air. They're being redirected into data centers, into AI infrastructure, into logistics networks that don't depend on a single city. Which leads to a much bigger question. If the capital is still flowing, but no longer flowing into places like Manhattan, then where is it going? And what does that mean for the future of cities like New York? This is no longer just about Amazon. What you're seeing is a collision between two systems that no longer align. On one side, you have cities like New York, built on a simple model. Tax concentration funds everything: public services, infrastructure, social programs. The higher the income, the more the system works. But on the other side, you have something very different. Global companies that are no longer tied to place. They optimize for cost, they optimize for flexibility, and most importantly, they can move. New York is now signaling higher taxes, higher costs, more pressure on the exact companies it depends on, and in response, companies aren't protesting, they're recalculating. Because they don't need to leave the country, they don't even need to leave the region. Sometimes all it takes is crossing a river. New Jersey, Connecticut, states with lower costs, fewer constraints, and just enough proximity to keep operations running, which changes the entire balance of power. Because if capital can relocate that easily, if billions of dollars can shift with a spreadsheet decision, then cities are no longer in control the way they used to be. They're competing in real time against every other location offering a better deal. And that leads to a much deeper question. In a world where companies can move faster than policy can react, who actually holds the power now? This is where the story flips. This isn't really about jobs, and it's not even about Amazon. It's about something much bigger and far more disruptive. For decades, cities like New York held power because companies needed them. They needed proximity. They needed talent density. They needed physical presence. That's no longer true in the same way. AI is starting to replace entire layers of middle management, the coordination, the reporting, the oversight, work that once required thousands of people, now handled by systems. At the same time, remote work broke geography. Teams don't need to sit in the same building, sometimes not even in the same country. And the cloud replaced the office itself. Infrastructure is no longer tied to a skyline. It lives in data centers, distributed across regions no one ever sees. So the advantage cities once had is fading. New York used to be a requirement. If you wanted access, you had to be there. Now, it's just one option on a list. And when a city becomes optional, everything changes, because companies don't stay out of loyalty. They stay because it makes sense. The moment it doesn't, they move. Which leads to a much more uncomfortable question. If the world's most powerful companies no longer need cities the way they used to, what happens to the cities that still depend on them? Amazon has already given its answer, not through headlines, but through action. Cut the workforce, keep the capital, move the system. New York can recover. It always has. But this time is different. This isn't a temporary shock. This is a shift in power. Money is moving, opportunity is moving, and it's not clear it's coming back. So here's the real question. In a world where capital can go anywhere, do cities still control their own future? Or are they being left behind?